Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk to you guys about the Zhiyun Crane M3. It's about why I ended up returning the Zhiyun Crane M3 after about 3 weeks of testing. I am looking for the ultimate small gimbal that can give me that edge and that payload capacity that can handle a variety of small format cameras such as my ZV-1, X-T4, the GoPro, Galaxy Note 20 Ultra, which can actually shoot 8K on, and also my Z Fold 3, which I occasionally use for videos as well. A variety of smaller cameras that I do want to bring with me during trips, but at the same time, I don't want to bring the weebOS because it's just a much bigger gimbal than I need it to be. With that being said, I'm going to give you 5 reasons as to why I returned the Zhiyun Crane M3. Alright, number 1, it's the price. At $379, that is a lot of money for a small gimbal. Now don't get me wrong, Zhiyun is creating something, a niche market that no one else at the moment is creating. Reason why is priced so high? Because at that time, it was the one and only small size gimbal that can handle a DSLR. I get it, it's been like 3 or 4 months now, and a lot has changed. Including Zhiyun themselves had just came out with the Zhiyun Crane M2S, which is at a much lower cost. For example, the weebOS, I bought it for $270 during Black Friday, and I note the price went back up to around $339. But this is a proven medium-sized gimbal that you know for sure can handle bigger mirrorless cameras without having the limitations on the amount of articulations that you might hit when it comes to mounting bigger cameras and bigger lenses on the gimbal itself. When it comes to the versatility, I would say that you can always err on the side of going with a slightly bigger gimbal because you know for sure it will be able to handle that payload. Versus the Zhiyun Crane M3, yes, it can do it, but it's probably not the best gimbal to handle bigger cameras because it's always reaching that maximum payload limit and you just have a harder time balancing. It's almost like the motor would just turn off. Yeah, you see that? It's just a little bit more restrictive. So when it comes to the options at $379, there are a ton of other options out there. The other cheap option that you have is getting the DJI Ronin SC, and currently it's only $279. That's a $100 savings that you can have. Zhiyun Crane M3 is much smaller, much lighter. And that's what you're paying for, is that portability that you can have with the M3 at the expense of like a lot of money. Point number 2 is that just because you can doesn't mean the M3 is the best gimbal for the job. Let me elaborate. I had the Fuji X-T4 with the kit 18 to 55 kit lens on there. And it's a great kit lens, by the way. If you're ever thinking about buying a Fuji system, I would highly recommend getting that kit lens. The 18 to 55 is just gorgeous. It's an f2.8 to f4. To confirm, yes, you can't mount that camera combo onto the Zhiyun Crane M3. However, what a lot of the other YouTubers are not telling you is that there are articulation limits to each of the axes. I ended up finding out the hard way by scratching the bottom of my Fuji X-T4 because it hit one of the corner of the gimbal. It's user error. I was slightly pissed about that, but I just want to let you know things like that will happen because it's really still made for smaller cameras. And if you're trying to mount, bigger cameras like the Sony a7 III on it, yes, you can do it, but it's not the best for it. Just because you can tow a 2,000-pound trailer in the back of a Honda Civic does not mean you should go uphill with it, right? And you have to live with a lot of limitations under that circumstances. The third point is that the battery life really is not that spectacular. Now, it does make up with a quick charge ability, which I like a lot, because with the weebOS, I was shooting a wedding and literally less than 6 hours, the battery was dead. But on the other hand, I would say that the Zhiyun Crane M3 battery is around 5 hours, like heavy usage on with a bigger camera. The quick charge is great. It really allows you to have that quick versatility when you need to just plug in a USB power bank and be able to power that thing up quickly. With that being said, I wish the battery life is longer. Not the end of the world. The quick charge is awesome. Let's talk about the stability of the gimbal. I would rank the stability of the gimbal 6.5 out of 10. This is with active stabilization turned off, just a standard stabilization. Right now, this is the one with the active stabilization on, which means it's cropped in a little bit more. And it's a little hard to do the ninja walk because there's a lot of snow. Now, if you use bigger gimbals before, like the bigger Ronins, you will feel a significant difference in weight, and that does help with the stability of the image. Nowadays, whenever I'm shooting with my Fuji X-T4, I always have the IBIS turned on. It will help, smooth out any type of jitters whenever you're filming it. However, I did realize in some shots where I'm using, say, the Sony ZV-1, the movements are a little bit more erratic, and I think that has to do with, number one, user errors, right? Like, I may not be like the most stabilized ninja walker in the world when I'm filming. Number two is that I think the weight has a lot to do with it. If you're carrying heavier mass, you tend to be more stabilized, but it comes at a cost of you getting tired and getting worn out much quicker. The Zhiyun Crane M3 is nice and light, but I just don't find it as stable. A couple of ways to go around it. Number one, you practice the ninja walk and just be really good at your skill set and prove yourself. Number two, you can always shoot in, say, 60 frames or 120 frames per second, slow down the footage. Everything slowed down looks beautiful. Number three, I would shoot in 4K and go wider and then do post-stabilization and afterwards. So keep that in mind. If you're shooting, you can shoot a little bit wider at a high resolution to give yourself more room for error whenever you are doing post-production, to do post-stabilization that crops in a little bit, and that will help you with the framing as well. So those are the three little quick tips that I want to give you guys whenever you're shooting with a gimbal. Number five is a personal use case. So this is completely subjective, and take my opinion with a big fat grain of Himalayan salt if you want to. I categorize my camera collection and usage by sizes. So I have your bigger size, like mirrorless Sony a7 IIIs, a7 R2s, and my Fuji X-T4, like with a bigger camera and lens setup, a little bit heavier. And then I have my Sony ZV-1, which is a right in the middle point and shoot, lightweight, but still have the ability to zoom in. So there's some weight variations when it comes to back and forth. And then there's the smaller form factor like my Z Fold 3, my GoPro 9. Now, when it comes to doing professional shoot, I will not be using the Zhiyun Crane M3. Like I mentioned in point number 4, you always tend to hit the upper limit of what the gimbal can do. And when you're in a professional setting, you don't want your equipment to fail. You need to do what you need to do to get the shot. And because of that, 90% of the time I'll bring the bigger gimbal with me, which is the Zhiyun S, that I know for sure can handle bigger payload, bigger lenses, and also even sometimes when you have to, you may need to zoom in, and that might change the weight distribution. And you want a gimbal that can handle that type of weight differences immediately without having to rebalance. Imagine you're filming someone walking down the aisle and you need to zoom in on the bride and groom kissing and then zoom out right away. You can't rebalance everything at the same time. You want a gimbal that has a motor that's strong enough that will be able to handle that weight differences right there and then. In the professional setting, I will always bring the S with me because I know I can trust that gimbal. On the other hand, if I'm vlogging, I'm using smaller form factor cameras, then do I need to spend $379 on the Zhiyun Crane M3? Or should I just get the cheaper version, the original Zhiyun Crane M2 at $179 and save myself 200 bucks? That's $200 savings. And because of that, I had a hard time deciding whether or not the Zhiyun Crane M3 gimbal actually fits my use case. It may fit yours if you don't have so many different types of cameras that you have to cater to, but you get my point, is that it's a product that tries to fill the niche, but ended up, I feel, even more divided, still having to buy a bigger medium-sized gimbal for my professional use case, and then have a smaller gimbal for like smaller cameras. Now, I would say this, if the Zhiyun Crane M3 is like $270, I think that's a no-brainer. But $379, I think that if you're patient, I'm sure the prices will go down. It's a great gimbal. There are all these other things that you can do with it. All I wanted to get across today is the 5 main reasons why I returned it and why I'm considering something else. If you're in the same shoe and you're thinking about whether or not you want the Zhiyun Crane M3 versus the WeeBoS or the DJI's Ronin, you know, there are a lot of options out there. And even Zhiyun Crane came out with the M2S, which I heard can carry pretty much the same amount of payload, but at $270. And that is why I returned the Zhiyun Crane M3 and trying something else out. Who knows if I'm gonna keep the Zhiyun Crane M2S? I really don't know. I hope I will. I'll be reviewing that very shortly. But in the meanwhile, I hope this video is helpful to you. And if you're still wondering or have any questions, please feel free to leave it in the comments below, and it will really make my day if you will subscribe to my channel. I hope to build a community together where we can talk about all things tech and camera related and just nerd out together. If you get to this point, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. Please consider subscribing, and I'll talk to you guys soon and see you next time. Bye!